Georgia, what's more fun, doing this or doing the local news in Tallahassee or Dateline? What was more fun?
Oh, this was much more fun. So much better than Dateline.
Welcome to a special edition of Surviving the Survivor. The Dan Markel murder with Carm on Crime.
We've got a giant size show today, Carm, on the Dan Markel murder case. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. But we were profiled this week in North Jersey's largest Jewish newspaper, The Jewish Link. Shout out to them. What do you think of the article? It talked about how we're bringing humor back to the Holocaust. No, to surviving in a rough world. What do you think of the story, Carm? I thought it was quite nice.
I tell you, as I said, it was better than reality. That's what good writing does.
100%. A shout out to Adam Samuel for writing a great story.
And I make a prediction.
What's your prediction, Carm?
He's going to go places.
He will go places because that was a very well-structured, well-written story. I will give him a kiss on the cheek next time I see him. So we are once again covering the Dan Markel murder case. And for those who are new to it, very quickly, he went to Harvard Law, Dan Markel, a smart man from Canada. He married a woman from South Florida, where we are, named Wendi Adelson. Came from a nice Jewish family. The marriage starts to go south. They are living in Tallahassee, where he's a law professor at FSU. Marriage goes south beginning in 2013. And in July of 2014, after Dan drops his kids off at daycare, he comes back to the home. He's shot twice in the head. It is a murder mystery. Eventually, they trace the car back. It turns out two hitmen from a gang here, right here in Miami, shot, killed, murdered Dan Markel. Eventually they were brought to justice, and intermediary Katie Magbanua was just convicted. And next up is the brother of the ex-wife, Charlie Adelson. So you're all caught up there. We've been getting a ton of feedback on this, and we're even putting out a newsletter now. So go to YouTube, and you can put in your email address if you want to get the letter and the updates we'll be sending out. But here's a comment or two. From Sophia L. I've been following the case from day one, loving everyone who is covering this case, which is a great comment since a lot of people were yelling at me, Carm, not because I was not knowledgeable, but because they were either upset I was calling you by your first name. As a Jewish boy, I should not be doing that, or they thought I was too harsh on you. You were 25 minutes late today with a big guest. But
this was the first time in 10 times.
Another comment.
And it was 15 minutes.
If Katie can prove that the Adelsons paid for her defense, is this grounds for a new trial for her? Well, we have the right person to ask that question to. One other comment. Please don't give ideas to the Adelsons. I think we said something, Carmela, last week in last week's show that someone thought, it was probably me in a moment of heated anger where I said something and they don't want me to give the Adelsons any credit. But we're going to be right back with arguably the biggest guest you could get in this case outside of Wendi Adelson herself. And we'll tell you who that is on the flip side of the break.
Do you want to help my son? His company, Content Partners Media, specializes in brand video and content creation for innovative companies and others. Please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com and hire him. I repeat, please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com.
Welcome back to Surviving the Survivor. Now, back to the Dan Markel murder.
Carm, as you know, I've been in broadcast news for 25 plus years. And in news, there's something called the get. And I don't mean a Jewish divorce.
Okay.
I'm talking about the person you want to interview in a trial, when there's a major trial. And today we have that person. And that person is Ms. Georgia Cappleman, who is prosecuting the Dan Markel murder case. Georgia, how are you?
I'm well, thanks.
May I call you Georgia, or should it be Ms. Cappleman?
Georgia's fine, thank you.
Okay, let's tell the audience a little bit about who Ms. Cappleman is. Georgia Cappleman is the Chief Assistant State Attorney at the Florida Office of the State Attorney. She is the architect of the state's case against the perpetrators involved in the Dan Markel murder case. Ms. Cappleman is an expert trial attorney and advocate. She has a slogan on her LinkedIn page, which I was snooping around last night, that says, "Stand for justice." And that's exactly what she does, and she does it well. Ms. Cappleman is a graduate of FSU and FSU's College of Law. She's 3 for 3, batting 1,000 in convictions so far in the Markel case, with Charlie Adelson sitting in jail right now, awaiting the next awaiting trial next. Now, it is important to note ahead of this interview we are doing today that Ms. Cappleman cannot talk about any strategy or anything factual. She is limited to procedural questions. The good thing is, Carm and I are not lawyers, so we don't really know the boundaries. So if we go over the boundary...
Or we don't know the difference.
We don't know the difference. George will let us know, but I know I'm going to start with some stuff here that I'm almost certain that Georgia can answer. I feel it's funny. I can call you Carm, but I feel funny calling Georgia, so I might call her Ms. Cappleman.
Call her Miss Cappleman.
Thank you, Carm. Carm wanted me to wear basically a tuxedo today too, so I did the next best thing, and I've got a button-down shirt. I had to draw the line at the tuxedo. So Georgia, Ms. Cappleman, you've covered other high-profile cases. How does the Markel case stack up for you?
Well, it certainly has garnered a lot of attention. I certainly have felt more love as a result of this most recent verdict than I have ever experienced in my career previously. Many times I'm in court fighting for a victim and nobody's there to support the victim and nobody cares about the outcome. So it is a pleasant change of pace to have some fans out there that care about the case and care about justice for Dan.
And speaking of fans, you've got quite a few fans. It's quite amazing, actually, how many comments we're getting coming in, both on our YouTube channel, on our Instagram page, which is at Surviving the Survivor, as well as on Facebook and Twitter. And Got Donuts, it's a funny name, but she's very intelligent, and she's following this case closely. And she sent a message asking me to relay this to you, saying, "Please thank Georgia for doing such a stellar job, all the while in some stunning pumps, yellow tipped with animal print. You go, girl." So you have not only legal fans, but fashionista fans as well. Now, people want to know, they're watching you and they're saying that they're mystified by your poise and patience. And they want to know how you stay so cool under pressure. How do you stay so cool?
Well, I've been doing it for a long time. I've been doing this for 20 years. So I know it's not going to advance the ball at all to let them see me sweat. Although that does happen. I just try to look like a duck on the surface of the water. Underneath, it's a lot of frantic movements.
I like that analogy.
No, but I think also that whatever anybody does as a profession in life, they sifted through their personality. I was thinking of this when I was watching you on YouTube. Everybody sifted through, and you are not a theatrical, histrionic person by personality. Am I correct?
I think so, yes.
She seems very, kind of like me, Carmela, very even-tempered.
Totally the opposite, studying opposites.
She seems very even-tempered,
yes.
calculated, just like myself, Carm. By the way, if you're ever 25 minutes late for the biggest get we have, there'll be hell to pay, Carm.
I will be fired.
Let the emails flow in. So, Georgia, what is your process, in preparing for a case in general? And how does the idea of exacting justice, how does that motivate you in your preparation?
I would say exacting justice is the sole motivator. We don't get paid a lot of money. We don't usually, as I said, get a lot of love or thanks for the work that we do here, but it is extremely motivating to feel confident that I'm doing the right thing and doing, a small part to leave the world a little better than how I found it. So I think my process is, relying heavily on my team. I've got law enforcement behind me, helping me investigate and prepare the best case possible. In this particular case, I had a second chair, a third chair, and some additional folks working on some legal research issues. So it was really nice to have that kind of support in place. So that probably helps to promote that placid exterior that you see when I get to the courtroom. There's a lot of work and effort that goes into that on many people's parts.
That's interesting. I take boxing lessons now, Carm, with a former number 4 heavyweight champion in the world, the great Josh Dempsey, the grandson of
not interested.
the great boxer Jack Dempsey. And fighters, and Prosecutor is a fighter, the key to being a great fighter is staying calm in the pocket. And that is exactly, there was a reason I brought it up, and that's exactly what Georgia seems to do.
I have a question.
Shoot, Carm, because I knew you were going to have
You will have to excuse us. We are not very methodical. I think both of us have attention deficit disorder. So we jump from question to question. One of my questions that crossed my mind is, in Florida, you have the media there. Because it becomes also, in a certain way, it becomes a media circus. So why do they allow the media into the courtroom? Or do they allow in every case or in exceptional cases?
They do allow it in every case. In Florida, we have very broad public records, laws, all the government takes place, what we call in the sunshine. So it sort of comports with that all the court proceedings are open to the public. It does not become much of a circus, though, because typically a pool cam operator is designated to run a feed to all the other outlets. So it's not like the courtroom's packed with media folks. There's just one pool camera and one photographer that supplies the footage to everybody else.
It makes me feel better. But I lost my train. 1 second. It happens when I'm excited. When I'm excited about somebody,
the train will come back to the station. But I know, Carm, you had a question last night that I'm going to refresh your mind about.
I know that question.
The time. Okay,
the
go ahead.
The question was, in this particular case, why did it take 4 years for the first indictment?
The first indictment came at the conclusion of a long investigation that just took a very long time. So one example would be getting the tower dump. I know you guys are familiar with the case, but the law enforcement knew that the suspects had followed the victim into the gym. So we knew they probably had cell phones there. So let's get all the cell phones that are communicating with the cell tower at the gym and comb through them and see if anything sticks out. So, that's the kind of thing that just takes forever. Trying to find a Prius in Miami takes forever. So a lot of the investigation just sort of was like needles in haystacks, and it took a long time to get through.
And how involved are you in that process while they're doing the investigating? Is it a sort of thing where you're on the phone with law enforcement on a daily basis? Are you going on with the rest of your life in terms of prosecuting other cases, which I think you definitely are? But what percentage of your time in that period where you were waiting to charge the first perpetrators, what percentage of your day was spent working on the Dan Markel case?
I'm definitely going on with my life and prosecuting other cases simultaneously, but also consulting with law enforcement on some of the legal issues as they arise. Law enforcement operates pretty independently of the state attorney's office throughout the investigation process. But once we get to things like wiretaps, that's something that my office is involved in approving and going through the training process and all of that before a thing like that goes live and starts recording.
Now let's get into some of the kind of the meat and potatoes. And I think the way we should do this, if we ask a question that you cannot answer, I will allow you to plead the fifth here, because we're doing it out of legal ignorance. And a lot of these, and I will tell you when they're coming from viewers, but Let's start with this. People wanted to know, is the state going to be seeking the death penalty against Charlie Adelson like it did with Mark Severs for a similar crime? Mark Severs had hitmen kill his wife, and I believe she was a doctor, which is kind of interesting. So what is the status with the death penalty in Charlie Adelson?
The status is that we are not seeking the death penalty against Charlie Adelson. So his charge is first-degree murder, and he will be facing a mandatory life sentence for that, but no death penalty.
Is there a reason for that? Are you able to tell us?
Yes, I think the primary reason is that we were not successful in obtaining the death penalty against the shooter, so did not feel that we would have a viable chance of pursuing the death penalty against the hirer.
Just legally, since we are not lawyers and a lot of the people who listen to us are not attorneys, how do you work this? For example, now Katie Magbanua is going up in July for sentencing, correct? Who decides? I read something that in certain cases it's the judge, in certain cases it's the jury. Who decides in this particular case?
The judge will decide the sentence, but the sentence in this case does carry a mandatory life sentence for count 1, first-degree murder. So the judge won't have any discretion to do anything other than life on that count.
Can I just do I did not have this as a planned question, but when you get a conviction with someone like a Katie I don't know if you say Magbanua or Magbanua. We say both ways.
I mispronounce everything.
Do you ever have I don't know, like a fleeting moment in some instances of I know she's a bad actor, but maybe she doesn't deserve life in prison. Maybe the penalty is harsher because there's some, as you just said, maximum mandatory sentences, right? But do you ever have a moment where you're like, I know this person was up to no good. I know they were involved, but maybe they shouldn't be spending life in prison, or maybe they should. I'm just curious from an emotional standpoint if that's ever difficult.
It's always difficult. I love doing my job and getting justice, and the law determines what the outcome will be, but I never am happy about somebody getting a life sentence. I think it's a heavy thing, and I do bear some responsibility in several life sentences, and I do take that very seriously.
We have a question from Al. How can Charlie Adelson have Donna Adelson's former attorney? Isn't this a legal conflict?
I think that's a good question that I cannot answer.
Excellent.
What about the pay? Who pays for the...
We're going to get to that, Carm.
Okay.
If there is a trial, this one comes from Angela. If there is a trial for Charlie, will Louis Rivera and Jeffrey Lacoste testify?
That's certainly a possibility, but I can't answer that one either.
Now, a lot of people were saying if there's a trial for Charlie, is there a case that there could be like a plea deal ahead of time and he never does go to trial? Is that the case?
That's certainly a possibility.
How would that work? Hypothetically,
if he wanted to enter a plea to the charge, he could enter a plea to the charge, or there could be a negotiated resolution with him and my office, none of which I have no indication that that's going to happen. I think it's very likely to be a trial. But in every criminal case, there's 3 options. You can plea straight up to the court and let the court determine sentence. You can negotiate a plea with the state, or you can have a trial.
And who is, quote, the state?
My office.
Okay.
Carm, I feel like you would have been a phenomenal prosecutor. Other than the fact
because I prosecute him all the time.
Other than the fact that you're a little lazy in your preparation, and I know that Georgia is
By the way, I have a question while he's complaining about me. I understand that Katie Magbanua was. I took this note. Speaking of lazy, she was accused of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation of murder. It's like, isn't that like an overlapping thing that was included already in the previous accusation? Is it necessary to do all three? Is there a law that says it's not bad enough that you have a first-degree murder on your hands? Now you have to all those others?
I think they are certainly related charges. Is it overcharging? I think that probably could be, reasonable minds could differ on that issue. But certainly it was a possibility that the jury here could have found that she was responsible for conspiring or hiring without actually being accountable to the murder itself. So that's why those charges were given for the jury to have options.
Okay, in that case, why was it first degree? Since she didn't pull the trigger, I was, in my mind, the first degree implies that I pulled the trigger.
Common sense might imply that, but in Florida, we have something called the principal theory. So if you do or say something to assist someone else in the commission of a murder, whether it be first or otherwise, then you can be charged the same as that person. So if I hire someone to do a murder, that's obviously a first-degree murder, it's premeditated, it's planned, then I can be charged the same as the person who pulls the trigger.
Now, moving on to arguably the most major character, at least one of the most major characters in this entire case, we got quite a few questions regarding Wendi Adelson, who went to the same college as me, incidentally. Wendy's direct examination began with making her repeat the terms of her immunity deal, that it wasn't anything special and no way would prevent future prosecution against her for this crime. So you guys basically had her read her own disclosure, in essence, her own legal disclosure. So what was the thought process behind opening with that, making her know that her immunity
This
deal...
was during Katie Magbanua's
Correct, Carmen.
trial.
Correct.
The idea was for the jury to understand exactly what the terms of her agreement were with the state, or her immunity deal was. Her immunity deal was conferred upon her by virtue of the fact that we subpoenaed her to testify. Had we not subpoenaed her to testify, she would not have agreed to do so. But the subpoena does come with, as it does with every other witness, with use and derivative use immunity, meaning no statement that she made pursuant to that subpoena could be used against her in future proceedings. That does not mean that she couldn't be prosecuted, just those statements could not be used in that prosecution.
Carmela, my dear mother, anything related...
He's kidding me, because people were saying he's a little harsh towards me.
I find myself... I am like the duck today. I can feel my legs flapping under the water, not because we're talking to the great Georgia Cappleman, but because our audience likes to eviscerate me anytime I say anything.
I am always coming out as the good cop, and he's always the bad cop, and it's really not true. Because outside
Georgia,
of this room, it's the opposite.
When we're off camera, this lovely, sweet woman is cursing at me, expletives. She's a vicious woman outside of here.
I'm totally vicious.
But she plays the sweet, harmless elderly woman, and so our fan base, I
will be 83 in a month, so I can play the old woman.
Our fan base eviscerates us. Carm, in that large notebook of yours, any questions specifically about...
there is something magic about you interrupting me and my thoughts flying out of my
head. Any
head.
Questions about Wendi specifically?
No, I know what I wanted legally. Okay, this is probably you will be able to answer it. Katie Magbanua said she made statements during her trial, and she did not make an agreement to a lesser sentence if she reveals things. Now, her sentencing is not until, I think, July. I wrote it down. 29th, July 29th. And correct me if I'm understand as a layperson, if she now goes and cooperates with the prosecution, it will be harder because she will perjure herself because she already said certain things under oath. But is it still possible?
It is still possible, but I do agree with you that she has credibility issues for sure.
Yeah.
Carm, Katie's not Wendi, but was good enough. And I love how you say her last name very quickly all the time. You kind of mumble.
Focus
Magbanua.
on other things, not on your mommy.
Georgia, if Wendi lied under oath in her testimony, does that negate the immunity deal overall, or does it just open her up for potential consequences for those specific false statements?
The latter. It would open her up for consequences if that could be proven. Well, arguably both, I think, is a better answer. Arguably both.
Arguably both. Okay.
Could you go over this again? Because I missed it.
So the question is, if she's proven to have lied, could that be used against her in future proceedings? And I think the answer is yes. And also she could face consequences for perjury if that could be proven that any witness lied under oath.
Now, Carm, this goes back to your question just now. This is another question. And this one comes from George Ferrero. Thank you, George. If Katie can prove that the Adelsons paid for her defense, is this grounds for a new trial for her potentially?
Anything could be raised. I could imagine a scenario where she could try to raise, I didn't have independent counsel, therefore my counsel was ineffective. So that certainly could be a claim. I don't view it as a successful one, but it certainly could happen.
We had a legal roundtable last week, and these are big time defense attorneys. One from New York City, one who mentor lawyer who's been following the case very closely, Judy Sang, they're excellent. But one of the, we asked them for like a potential defense, and I don't know if you can comment on this. And really what they were, one of the ones that they posited was, well, the Adelsons hired these hitmen, but not as hitmen, just to rough up Dan Markel, and it went bad. I mean, I guess the question here is, would a defense like that, what would you do with a defense like that? Is it just so easy to pick apart, given the crazy amount of evidence to the contrary?
There is an affirmative defense in Florida called independent act. So if you are in agreement to act in concert with someone to do something, say, I don't know, a drug deal, and it ends up going bad and the person, has a gun unbeknownst to you and shoots somebody in the process, then you can raise that as a defense. Well, yes, I was in for the drug deal, but I was not in for a murder. I didn't know that my co-defendant was armed. We didn't discuss that in advance. We didn't plan for that, etc. So that is certainly a potentially viable defense. It's hard to know, it depends on a lot of different factors, how successful it's going to be. But you have to admit a lot of involvement to accomplish it. So it's similar to a self-defense. You have to say, yes, I did it, but I only did these certain parts of it. So it's a mixed bag for a defendant, I think, in general, to go with independent act.
Farm, did you have something?
No, I always joke that I'm a little paranoid on the edges. As a personality person, I always am a little bit. One of the first times we were having the podcast, I said, Joel said, "What are you thinking about?" And I said, "I'm thinking somebody will try to won't like what I'm saying, and they'll try to get rid of me. But the joke will be on me because I will be dead anyway from natural causes by then." But I am thinking, doctors are getting shot in hospitals if the patient doesn't like the diagnosis. Do you ever feel that some of these drug dealers or whoever the honorable people you are dealing with, do you ever think these people are really, they may want to do me harm? Does it ever cross your mind?
Yes, I do take some precautions, but you can't put yourself in a bubble. But I do have fears and concerns and try to, keep my address off the internet, which is a difficult thing to do, and try to, protect the identity of my kids and stuff like that. So yes, I do have some of those concerns, but I'm just not the type of person that's gonna spend much time worrying about things I can't control.
That's a very good idea. I don't either. But if you lived in Miami, you would be probably in bigger danger from road rage than from anything. They are if you pass them too fast on the wrong
Carm,
side.
it's a dangerous job. We are originally from Highland Park, New Jersey, the town next door, North Brunswick, New Jersey. There was not very long ago a Superior Court judge, and a gunman showed up at her front door in North Brunswick and actually shot and killed her son.
Don't tell her that. That story you did not have to tell.
Well, I'm just saying, George, I apologize, but it's a valid fear, and it's a dangerous job, but it's an important job. Now,
no, it's really I admire it that you are doing it, because I really feel that if people would not do this job, where would we be? People would get away with murder, no pun intended. People would get away with murder.
Literally.
As the Adelsons.
Not me, then who?
Exactly. And if not now, when?
We have another question from Lard Brick. There's some interesting names online. And he asks, I think it's a he, we actually have a large following in England, and I can't really figure out, following this case, which is interesting. I don't know why the English are very interested in this case, but shout out to our brothers and sisters in England, in the UK. Has Katie indicated she is ready to talk? And if so, what would the state give her potentially in return for her testimony against Charlie Adelson? This is sort of along the lines of what we just talked about. Are you able to answer that at all?
Yeah, I definitely cannot answer that one.
He knew that.
Now, Katie Magbanua's defense lawyers had been hinting for months that they were going to call Sigfredo Garcia, the hitman who's now been convicted to life in prison, as a defense witness. He's also the baby daddy of Katie Magbanua's kids. Why do you think he didn't testify?
Because he didn't think he could keep all his lies straight. I don't know. That's a joke. I don't know. He does still have pending appeals. I'm sure he didn't want to compromise his appeals. I would just be guessing.
Harm, we got the prosecutor to joke. That's no small feat. I'm proud of us for this.
And I'm going to can I use it in the future, because she couldn't, I always say, my children, don't lie because you cannot keep your facts straight. I do that.
Are you able to share, and I don't even know if you know them off the top of your head, any of the questions that you had planned to ask Sigfredo Garcia during his cross-examination? Maybe one or two big questions, since he did not testify.
No, I wouldn't be able to do that.
You wouldn't, because that might come back. Okay, on to the next thing here. This is a big one, too. The enhancement of the so-called Dolce Vita audio by an audio forensics expert seemed to be a crucial development between the two trials. Are you able to tell us a story of how that enhancement came about and why it took so long to get that audio enhancement done?
Sure. So that exhibit traveled through the hands of several different experts before it got to Mr. McElveen, who ultimately was able to produce the product we published in court. I do know that there were some advancements in technology that assisted Mr. McElveen in ultimately producing the better result. But I think also we just largely finally found the right person for the job. This guy, I think his credentials were a little bit understated in trial because, I don't know, maybe if he says it, he'll have to kill us or something. But I mean, he was very highly regarded by the federal government, worked on anti-terrorism type of stuff, and just really seemed to be the best man for the job. So why it took me that long to find him, I don't know, but I'm very glad that I did. I beat my head against the wall with this thing for years because I just couldn't believe that that was the best we could do. You know, you could make it out, but only if you labored over every word and stopped and rewound and listened and listened and listened with headphones. So I could hear it, but I couldn't find an expert who could get it into a format that I could successfully publish it to the jury. So that was very frustrating. And I'm thrilled that the jury was, able to listen to it.
It was a crucial part of the evidence.
Yeah.
Correct?
It must have been so frustrating because, that was a huge key to the conviction, or one of them, and you have it sitting in your hands, right? But you can't use it till you find this guy. How did you find it? Are you sitting here Googling like audio enhancement expert? How does that work?
I did do that, but that's not how I found him. He had done some work with the FBI before, and someone at a meeting threw out his name as, hey, we could circle back to this guy. And so we did.
This is something what I'm going to say now should be said in the very end of our talk, but I'm going to say it now because I may forget by the end of our talk. Right now, as we are talking, today is the middle of June, and basically we are only halfway through. You are halfway through with this story, with this case, correct? You did, and maybe people will right now hate mail to me, but I think that Garcia and Rivera and Magbanua are, so to speak, the low-hanging fruit. They were easier to, with the net, pull in.
Yes, we get it.
Yeah, you get the picture, to catch. Then the Adelsons themselves. And now, and they are guilty. I don't know how many of them, or who, or how. Now comes the second half of the case, correct?
Well, right now we have Charlie Adelson left, so less than half. But I understand what you're saying. The other part of the conspiracy remains.
The other part of the conspiracy.
I'm dying to jump in and comment, but I'm refraining. It hurts so much. I want to comment so badly. We have a question from Got Donuts again. I love her name.
How do you know it's a girl?
She has a photo, and it appears to be a woman. But these days, you have to be politically correct. I don't know. She might be non-gender conformist. Who knows? But she has a question, and she says, for the fabulous Georgia, regarding Garcia phoning Katie after the murder had taken place to report that the job is done, and Katie says, I know. How did Katie know? You can't answer this one.
I don't know.
Did you follow that, Carm?
No, I was looking at
I know, Carm. You need to be present in the moment.
All right, okay? All right.
In the moment. Will the jailhouse telephone calls be released to the public?
I don't know the answer to that either. I do intend to file a motion to that effect, so we'll see. And
wrapping up the Magbanua. By the way, do you say Magbanua or Magbanua? Because I'm going to go with your pronunciation.
I say Magbanua, which I believe is correct.
Okay, Magbanua. I think we should probably go with Ms. Cappleman's pronunciation, considering she's dedicating her life to this case. People want to know, what was it like working with Sarah Dugan? Shout out to her on this trial overall, and specifically seeing her take Katie down detail by detail. She works with you, but sort of for you as well.
We work independently of each other. She actually runs one of our divisions in an outlying county, so in another office from mine, but we worked together previously. I adore her. I think she's incredibly talented, and she is very detail oriented, which I'm really not. I'm more of a big picture kind of gal. So I think that struck a good balance for us working together, especially with her doing the super detail oriented witnesses, such as the phone stuff and the financial stuff. But she did an outstanding job on her cross-examination. So I was really happy with it, and happy to see her get a lot of love from people that were following the case for her efforts on the cross.
What is the single biggest factor to being a great prosecutor? What's the single biggest attribute?
The X factor, honestly, just being able to distill a case in a way that a jury can digest and relate to and care about.
Do you have access to who the jury is? The people in the jury. Do you know that this one went to high school, this one went to college, this one is in the process of divorce, this one lost a child?
Yes, some of those things. That we don't always ask all the right questions at jury selection, but we do have an opportunity during the jury selection process to ask jurors questions about themselves, so we know their age, how long they've lived here, have they ever served on a jury before, do they have relatives or friends in law enforcement, have they been a victim of a crime, charged with a crime, and then we can ask them within reason whatever we want. So certainly if they had any contact with the legal system, so that would include divorces and things like that. And if it's relevant, to the case, then we try to sort of drill down on certain issues. Have you ever been involved in a custody dispute, for example? Things like that.
Carmela is a therapist, a trained therapist. And
I have a master's.
What part of prosecuting is psychology?
It probably should be more. I am not a trained psychologist, but I think it'd be very helpful if I were. A lot of it is based on my gut and experience. Sometimes you just kind of, and there's a lot of literature on what type of folks are good jurors for the state. And, that's to be taken with a grain of salt. I think there is some wisdom there, but a lot of it boils down to your gut and who's behind them, because sometimes you don't love a juror, but the next one's worse and you got to take what you got. So we're just learning to love the ones we're with.
The hung jury with Katie Magbanua. The hung jury before. Do you get information who hung the jury? I mean, the members who were opposed.
We don't get that information per se, but jurors have the freedom to speak to whomever they please once their service is concluded. And in that case, one of the jurors, not the hung juror, but another one came in and spoke to us. So we did know who it was and what the reasoning was, at least from that juror's perspective. And then you mentioned mentor lawyer. One of the jurors went on his podcast and spoke, so we got some more information from that person.
And someone had asked me, this was not going to be my next line of questioning, if you will, but someone did ask, things get heated in the courtroom between the state and the defense attorneys. What is your relationship like? Do you guys, is it akin to sports where you are kind of mortal enemies, or do you guys just do what you need to do in the courtroom and then you guys can go out and have a drink afterward? What is the relationship with the defense?
I think that's very dependent on the particular prosecutor and particular defense attorney. In general, it's more that we can go have a drink afterwards, and I have done that on many instances. But I did not have a drink with these guys.
I want to have a drink with Georgia Cappleman one day. I'm going to drive up to Tallahassee just to do that one day.
We are going to celebrate after the end of all the trials.
You're convinced more convictions are coming.
I am sorry, I'm speaking in plural, trials.
This next question comes from Al, and this actually blew me away for many reasons. It was a lengthy question, but it also goes to show you, Georgia, how closely our audience scrutinizes this case, how closely people are following it. And here's the question. Luis Rivera took a picture of a barn owl on the first trip to Tallahassee, and he posted it on Instagram. When Wendi Adelson is interrogated on the day of the murder, she's wearing an owl t-shirt. The Greek word for owl is tuto. Tuto is the nickname of Sigfredo Garcia, the man who shot Wendy's ex. Has Georgia considered that the orchestrators of this murder purposefully stacked outrageous thing upon outrageous thing in order to make this entire thing sound crazy to any jury? I mean, that's just incredible.
No. This is somebody who is alone in his basement and
Al,
No
don't yell at me.
offense.
Oh, the hate mail's coming your way. Oh, I love it. Al, send her the hate mail, please. But Georgia,
I cannot comment on that, but I will tell Al that I did also notice the owl shirt.
wow. See, maybe it's not that crazy. And I, by the way, went to Highland Park High School in Highland Park, New Jersey. Shout out. We were the Highland Park Owls. Carm, do you have a question right now that you'd like to interject with before I continue on?
Well, if I can look, because
and George's time is precious, so we're going to wind this down in a little bit, but I want to get as much in here as we can. Do you have a question?
Right after the murder, there was an 18-minute phone call between Charlie and Katie. Just immediately after. Is this like significant, or are you aware of this, or is this part of the whole total big picture?
My guess is she's aware of it.
No, wait a second.
Yeah, I think it was a piece of evidence that was presented to the jury, and up to them to determine what significance to place on it.
I didn't mean if she's aware in general, if with all the minutiae and detail and stories and sometimes things get lost in the shuffle. There are so many details and so many disparate characters in this. I think that's one of the reasons that people are so into it too. What's your theory? Because this trial, people are more into it, not only in Florida, but in other places. Do you think that's the reason, or do you think it's because rich people and poor people and white people and people of color or whatever?
I don't know. I think you probably got it right that it's just intriguing on so many levels because there's so much depth to all the different characters and the evidence and the investigation and what it took to get where we are now. It's interesting.
What's wild is, as a news reporter, in most cases, unless you're following a huge story, you do your story and you're done, which is what I love about it. And then 99% of the time, you never look back on it. It's
never
gone.
revisit it.
It's in the ether, if you will. But with George's job, it's like you eat, sleep, and breathe this, right? Are you able to talk about this with your significant other? You must dream about some of the stuff, but are you able? Do you have to keep it all? Or can you say, "Hey, husband, this or that? What do you think?" Or do you have to go to the other prosecutors working the case?
Well, everyone in my life wants to talk about the case. Everyone I meet wants to talk about the case. So generally, my husband knows that I do not want to talk about the case with him. Let's talk about anything else. But he is a retired law enforcement officer, so I do have the luxury of being able to speak intelligently with him about my job, which sometimes is very helpful. But in this instance, I'm really just looking for anyone that wants to talk about anything else.
My husband is a psychiatrist. He's 88 and he's now disabled. But when he was doing his residency, his professor said to him, "Don't psychoanalyze your wife." He said to all the residents, "Don't just put your arm around her and tell her you love her, and you'll do more good that way than with all the psychoanalysis." And thank God, I think he took this seriously, and that's how he deals with all my crazinesses, instead of...
When I got married, they said, just keep saying, yes, honey, and that has worked for me, which is more simple. But on we go. So Karen Cyphers and Jason Solomon, shout out to both of them, they run a site called Justice for Dan. And she has a lengthy question here, but I think it's an important one. I'm going to fly through this here. And again, George's time is precious, so we're going to get to the end as soon as we can, but this is important. So it says here, Georgia Cappleman's overall approach, focusing on the overwhelming number of coincidences in Katie's story, was powerful and persuasive. Some have observed that Wendi herself may be employing a similar counter strategy. I find this stuff fascinating. There are a number of things that Wendi did immediately before and after the murder that have been used to imply her innocence. That is, a guilty person would not drive past the crime scene. A guilty person would not repeat her brother's hitman joke to multiple people, including cops. A guilty person would not buy, this is fascinating, Bullet brand whiskey, knowing it would be seen. Given what was suggested at trial, Wendi was part of an effort to frame Jeff Lacoste for the murder, that's her ex-boyfriend, had financial and other motive, and acted suspiciously in her drive on Trescott. Could reverse psychology be a calculated effort on her part to appear unknowing? And she is an attorney by training. Are you able to comment on this, Georgia?
No, sorry.
No. But she's soaking it all in. Georgia's like, oh, this is good.
No, but this may help. We may help with this.
Georgia's going to call me and ask for my questions after this. Question from Angie.
By the way, you're going to send
100%, Carmel. From Angie. Are courts, this one's for you. Listen up here, Carm. Are courts reluctant to prosecute elderly suspects like Donna and Harvey Adelson because of the sympathy factor influencing jurors? Is that a problem?
No, we take great pains to prosecute any guilty parties regardless. I mean, that's certainly a consideration that you think about going in front of a jury. What is the sympathy factor going to be, and how can I address it and try to neutralize it? But it's not something that would play into a charging decision.
You hear that, Carm?
I was ready for
Your
that.
fertile ground.
I kind of like that. Let it begin in the justice system and spread to society at large to treat older people. I am now working for grandmother rights.
You are fertile ground for prosecution. By the way, speaking of grandmother rights, one of the tragedies of this whole thing is that Wendi Adelson changed the children's name and prevented the Markel's parents from seeing their grandkids. And there's now a law in motion to prevent this from happening. Are you able to tell us about this at all?
It's a little outside my area of expertise. I am familiar with the efforts that the grandparents have made to try to get a bill passed that will allow some rights for grandparents that are trying to seek access to the grandchildren here in Florida. And I'm also aware that the Markels did have a visit with the grandchildren before Charlie's indictment. So they did get to see their grandkids on at least one occasion. But overall, yes, they have been absolutely just devastated, not only by the death of their son, but by the loss of access to their grandchildren.
And they, of course, are the true victims, them and obviously Dan Markel, who does not have a voice anymore. Carm, dig up another question or two while I ask this one, and then we're going to wrap it up. As a theoretical question, the prosecution is required to disclose any relevant evidence to the defense. But is it possible that in some cases, both the prosecution and the defense agree to withhold some evidence from public disclosure? If such evidence is sealed while the case is prosecuted, when must it be released? So do you guys ever team up essentially to withhold evidence?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Yes, we often agree that certain things will not be admissible in court. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but I think it's a separate matter as to whether or not the information can ultimately be released to the public. That would have to involve court intervention to seal anything from the public. But I could imagine a scenario where both parties and the court are in agreement that something should be sealed and then it would not be released to the public.
Now, Georgia, Charlie Adelson, who appears to be next up for trial unless there's some sort of plea deal, today marks, this is how closely I now follow this, today marks 57 days exactly that he has been sitting in a Tallahassee jail. How much pressure is on a defendant when they are now sitting in a jail cell and the prospect of sitting there for the rest of their lives? I'm 52. He's 45. I feel 17, but my body feels 93. But how much pressure is there on his shoulders right now in terms of what he what he can do, what he should do legally to ease that burden from himself?
Yeah, fortunately, I haven't had that experience and hope I never do. So I don't really know, but I imagine it's very heavy. I think probably has been since the inception of this case, weighing heavy on lots of involved parties. So, all I can say is that he seems to have very competent counsel representing him. So hopefully
the follow-up question
for him.
The follow-up question is, since he's there 57 days, and is there a projected approximate time of the start of the trial?
No, we haven't even begun to discuss that. I've just provided all the documentation to his attorney, who will have to review everything, make decisions about what, if any, depositions he wants to conduct and how to proceed from there. So it could be months, it could be years. It's really impossible to say at this point.
Now, this is a very intricate case. You brought up Charlie Adelson's defense team. He's being represented by a guy named Michael Weinstein. There was a lot of talk because Michael Weinstein's father was, correct me, Carmela, he was high up in state politics, and there was a lot of talk that he and the Adelsons are very close, and he was sort of stifling the prosecution's attempts to prosecute this case in any way initially. Are you able to?
That is the general goal of all defense attorneys. So if he was doing that, he was doing well. But Mr. Adelson is currently represented by someone else. So you're correct that Mr. Weinstein was present early in the case, but he does have new representation at this time.
He does. Okay. And when people, I'm being careful with my questioning here because I'm talking to a legal expert, but what I'm getting at are Donna and Wendi freaking out right now. They are not sleeping well, and I know you probably can't comment directly on that, which is why I was trying to phrase it a little bit differently. But if I'm Wendi Adelson or I'm Donna Adelson, and I know that Georgia Cappleman is a prosecutor and she's in Tallahassee and she's a badass, I don't think I'm having too much fun if I'm Wendi Adelson going out for a drink with my friends, or if I'm Donna Adelson playing pickleball. I think I'm worried that someone's going to come and handcuff me at any moment. So I won't ask you specifically about Wendi or Donna because I know you're going to tell me you can't answer that. But if you're involved potentially in a high-profile murder case, how uncomfortable is that for her? The way Charlie's sitting in jail right now, it's probably even more uncomfortable for the people who know that justice might be coming their way, and it's just a matter of time. So I guess my question is, how frightening is it for those people who could be in your line of fire?
I don't know. Wendi was pretty confident in her testimony that, no bad things were ever going to come her way. So,
okay, let me ask you something. I am playing devil's advocate. Suppose Wendi would say, I heard these crazy things, but I did not think he would do it. I did not approve of it. You have nothing. I have no phone calls about this. You have nothing on me.
How does she know? How does she know?
What, that they don't have anything on her?
Maybe.
I don't, because she's a legal person.
Maybe the state got a warrant, and maybe her phones are being tapped right now. We don't know.
But she knows what to say on the phone and what not to say.
People will trip up, Carm. People trip up. But
I think the answer is knowing about it is not enough. We have to prove that the person, whoever it is, did or said something to assist the other members of the conspiracy in getting the thing done. They wanted it to be done, and they did or said something to assist. But so that is it needs to be a substantive thing, not just I knew my family joked about this before. But I think, whoever was involved, it should be weighing heavily on their mind, and they should be afraid because, I believe in the justice system. I believe that the truth has a way of coming out some way, somehow. So whomever was involved should be scared.
For example, the husband, the grandfather,
Harvey Adelson.
Harvey Adelson, the Wendy's and Charlie's father. Every discussion that the YouTube chatter and the Spotify chatter, they hardly mention him, as if he were not even, as if I always have this image of him sitting in another room and reading the newspaper. And it's a bizarre thing. How far does this go? Where does it spread? The grandmother, the way she reacted to that bump by the police, and the way she didn't go to the police, Donna.
You're talking about the informant?
Yeah, the informant. It obviously didn't look good.
Carm, I can answer this question. I know a thing or two about overbearing Jewish mothers, and in this,
I identified with that part of her minus the crime. She's a bossy Jewish grandmother.
But your question is, how do we know that Harvey Adelson?
But there is a limit between us normally bossy Jewish grandmothers and the ones who plot to kill our son-in-laws.
And I think after all that, your question was, how do we know Harvey's not involved? And Georgia's not able to answer that.
No, but I don't want you to answer it. But it's kind of a bizarre reaction to leave him out when he is married to one of the possible next domino pieces to fall, So
do you have to look at him, I think, is what Carmela's asking.
I think we have to go wherever the evidence takes us, and that's what we're in the process of doing.
I just wanted to ask you for a huge favor. No matter how we came across to you now, when the entire trial is over, please come back and we will review the whole picture, because it's a fascinating case that you have. One in a very, very rarely do people get so involved in a fascinating of these dimensions. This is a fascinating story of almost like epic dimensions. The way that everybody cares about it, everybody analyzes all the minutiae, and we would really, in a way, we would want to celebrate you when you are finished.
I would be happy to come back. Thank you for having me.
I want to wish you really good luck because I consider you are now facing the second half, which is the more difficult half.
Well, that scares me.
I want you to face it and eat a lot of spinach.
Those duck legs are spinning wild, but
yeah,
Georgia,
they're going to be tired.
Yeah, Carmela instituted a law on this show that I must ask all the guests, how can I help them? Is there any way that I can help you? Or Carmela.
I'm open to suggestions and ideas from you and your listeners. I know a lot of people are following this closely, and I'm not above advice, although I do get a lot of it. I can't, of course, take it all, but I am open to it. So thank you to everyone for listening and following it and offering thoughts and tips.
And good luck to you.
Audience, send in those questions. Send in those questions. And a last shameless plug. Georgia, what's more fun, doing this or doing the local news in Tallahassee or Dateline? What was more fun?
This was much more fun. So much better than Dateline.
Yeah, surviving. Look at that. She just cut us a promo, too, as they say in that fight world.
He's such a hustler. I can't stand it.
You're the best. Thank you so much. This was actually very important for our audience. What you're doing is very important. Justice must be served. Charlie Adelson, I hope you get YouTube in your jail cell, and Wendi and Donna, watch your backs. Georgia, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
and
it.
Good luck to you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
We'll be right back.
Back to the Dan Markel murder with Carm on Crime.
You say something inappropriate.
I was going to say something,
Don't
Carm, but
say
I will
that,
not
don't
say anything
say it.
inappropriate. However, let me tell you something. Superheroes come in all shapes and sizes, but it's not a cliche. She has a very difficult job. As she said, she's not paid a lot. She definitely is not. And she puts in a lot of ways, her life on the line because she's dealing with some real bad actors. And she puts away people that deserve to be put away. What did you think of the interview?
I think that we got so much information that we did not expect because we thought she would always say no comment, no comment, no comment.
There was like one or two questions she couldn't comment on.
Yes, a few questions, but we knew it ahead of time, but we tried.
I think that Steve Cohen, our fabulous booking producer, who got us this interview with Georgia Cappleman, will be thrilled. Steve is one of the best.
Oh boy, we are getting real fancy now. We have a
He's one
booking
he's
producer.
one of the,
He's your friend.
He's a friend. He's one of the best in the business. Steve, we know each other from Fox. Harm, thoughts, comments? We're going to wrap. Usually you like to extend the goodbyes.
I tell you now, I'm compiling a list of people who intimidated me.
Are you upset that you did not? Are you upset that you did not become a prosecutor? I think you would have been one of the best.
No, I'm not upset about anything because I believe in the not to have regrets.
And what did you think of Georgia?
I was better at
Georgia struck me as a detail-oriented person, but you said she's not. She's big picture, but she's...
Well, everything is relative. She's detail-oriented, but the person you asked her about, her associate, is more of a... So everything is relative.
She's tough as nails, I'll tell you that. She's tough as nails.
No, she is not tough as nails. She is, in an orthodox fashion, she is following the law.
Said she's going to get a drink with me. I need to get a permission slip from my wife. Any closing thoughts, Carm?
Yes, my closing thoughts is that I wanted to say this for the record. I was intimidated by Lizzie Savetsky,
oh, jeez,
who is completely non-comparable to
Lizzie Savetsky, I love you and you're sweet, but she's literally a nobody who has an Instagram
Oh
following.
my God, she is not a nobody. She has the best fashion.
Brand. Okay, we're not going into
anyway,
it. I love her, but this woman is a...
It doesn't matter why. I'm just giving the names of people who
and
intimidate.
Don't start calling me my sister and my nieces that I just said. I'll say this is my show. I say what I want to say.
May I say something? Yes. May I say something? You don't understand. People intimidate people for different reasons. So Lizzie Savetsky intimidated me because I am a horrible dresser, and Dara Horn,
who wrote a book called "People Love Dead Jews"
because she's so creative and so brilliant and so bright. And
I'm smarter. And why did Georgia Cappleman?
But you did not write a book that she did. And the third person who intimidated me but most, I would have not been intimidated interviewing the President of the United States. I truly would not have been. But she knows, she's a lawyer. She knows the rules of the game, and I know nothing about the game of the law. Which is
trust me, you would be a lot more nervous interviewing the president, and I'll tell you why.
No, I would not. I would not.
They'd be clearing... doing safety clearances, coming through here, sweeps with dogs.
I told you always not to curse out people on the Instagram because they would find it on yours, but not on mine.
Carm, it was a pleasure having you on the show today. It was a pleasure having Georgia
it was
Cappleman.
Totally pleasure having you on the show.
And Carm, by the way, we did 2 episodes this week, and we're doing 2 next week to kind of stack up for the summer. And you said you're not doing it again. And every time we come in here, it's the best part of your week. It's the thing you enjoy the most.
Don't speak for me.
And it gets you out of that nursing home of a building you live in Miami Beach.
Don't speak for me. The best part of my week is to see your children.
Do you have a final comment to our audience?
I'm sorry we have no low background, so we couldn't ask the right questions.
You know, you could also say I don't have a final comment. That's true, too.
And I always have a final comment.
Love you, America.
Love you, America.